On today's episode of Tyler Rambles About Random Crap, I'm going to talk about whether the CRF300L is a beginner bike. Good morning. It's about 10:30. I haven't changed my clock for daylight saving. Today what's been on my mind is a lot of comments that I saw after a recent video that I posted about people saying that the CRF300L is just a beginner bike. And I wanted to talk about that. But before I get into it, just a quick disclaimer about my videos. My motovlogs tend to be just me rambling about whatever's on my mind, very stream of consciousness, anecdotal information. So if that's not your cup of tea, it won't hurt my feelings. And for anyone who clicked on this video just to see, whether the CRF300L is going to be a good bike for them to learn on, just a quick opinion on that. I think if you have longish legs, or at least long enough to flat foot or almost flat foot the bike when you sit on it, then I think it would be a great bike to learn on, to be a beginner on. If you've got a little bit shorter legs, like me, I would recommend going with something like the Yamaha XT250 or the TW200. I've never actually ridden a TW200, but I hear they're great, just to build up your confidence. But on to my deeper thoughts on the subject of whether the CRF300L is a beginner bike. The term beginner bike kind of implies that there is a non-beginner, and that when you're not a beginner anymore, you need something else. And I don't believe that for me. In the video game world, there's a term called endgame gear, and it's talking about the weapons and the armor and all that crap that you want for your end game. Like, you don't ever need to upgrade your sword again. Don't ever need to upgrade your, magic wand again, because you've got the best there is. And I think that terminology can apply to the motorcycling world. Is the CRF300L or the 300L Rally an end game bike as well as a beginner bike? Well, that completely depends on what your end game is. I've seen lots of people in forums and Facebook groups that go from bigger bikes to the 300L because their end game is more relaxed, trail riding, easy stuff, and they want something lighter and just easier. So for that end game, yes, it's an end game bike. If your end game is going on cross-country tours with a big group of people who are all going to be traveling at 80-90 miles an hour on freeways for hours on end, then this probably isn't your end game bike. So once you know what your end game is, you'll know whether this is just a beginner bike or if it's a beginner bike that is also your end game bike. And for me, I think it is an end game bike. It's not my only end game bike. I still have aspirations for different things, for different needs, but I just don't ever see myself outgrowing the 300L Rally. I just love it, and it's perfect for what it's perfect at, which is what I do out here in the desert. And some people, I'd say a lot of people, especially if you're just getting into motorcycling, don't know what their end game is yet, and that's fine. I've got some college kids, and they're not really sure what they want to major in yet, and so I always just say, try a bunch of classes and see if anything resonates with you. And I have the same recommendation for motorcycling. You don't have to know going into it whether or not this bike is going to be your end game bike. Any bike. Start riding and see what resonates with you. But I just don't subscribe to the idea that there has to be an evolution. I don't know what it is about us. Maybe it's human nature, maybe it's man nature, I don't know, that we always feel like we need to keep getting bigger and faster or whatever. But there is that mentality, I've run marathons in the past, and a lot of the people that I train with have gone on, it's like they run a marathon and they've conquered that mountain, and now it's on to the next bigger, better mountain, and so they start doing triathlons and ultra races. I've got friends who run 100-mile ultra marathons, and friends that do, the Ironman triathlon, which is just insane to me. But for me, a marathon was always just enough. In fact, it was a little bit too much. I prefer a half marathon for running. And so, the half marathon is really my sweet spot. That's my end game. I'm not looking to run 100-mile ultra marathons. This is icy section right here. So, but I talk to my friends who run ultra marathons, and they talk about half marathons like a lot of people talk about the 300L or the XT250. Like, oh yeah, that's a fine little race to get you started on, but at some point you're going to need to run with the big boys. Same mentality in the motorcycle world, that it's like, why spend all this money on a toy when you could spend a little bit more or less and get a real bike? And I just don't subscribe to that. But I do get it. I think sometimes we want something just because it's there. Another random analogy, when I was a teenager, I delivered pizza for Godfather's Pizza, and I made really good money, I thought, for being 18, lots of money in tips, at least compared to other fast food jobs that I'd worked. But there became an assistant manager position that opened, and I just really wanted that prowess. I wanted to be the manager. I wanted to I wanted to climb up the ladder. Again, that human nature. I just wanted to progress. And so I applied, I got the job, and I just hated it. I hated everything about it, and I just wanted to go back to the simplicity of being a pizza delivery driver, where I could just kind of do my own thing. I get tips, and I wasn't under all this pressure. And again, I've seen examples of this with the 300L. In fact, I've seen people on forums say, I bought the 300L, decided I wanted to upgrade, so I got something bigger and regretted it, so I sold that and went back to the 300L, or now I'm looking for a 300L again because I like the old way. And of course, you see a lot of the other way, where it's like, I bought the 300L and it was great, but I just outgrew it. And I just think that's something it's if it's just not doing what you want it to do, then yes, it's time for you to move on. But if it's doing everything that you want, and you just feel like it's the right thing to do in the community to get a bigger bike because you've been on this smaller bike long enough and it's time to move on, just don't get caught in that mental trap of, at some point I have to evolve, and sometimes I have to move on. Just remember that this is all about, at least for me, it's all about fun. It's all about relaxation. It's all about mental therapy. And if it's doing that for you, then it doesn't need to be just a beginner bike. So if you have a 300L or a 300L Rally or any other bike that the community at large deems just a beginner bike, and you love it, just don't give in to the peer pressure of thinking that you have to move on because it's the thing to do, because that's what you do as a motorcycle rider. If you're a real motorcycle rider, you have to eventually be on a 1200 GS or a Pan Am or whatever. If you're happy with it, it's your end game bike. That's all I can say. Anyway, I appreciate you sticking around to listen to my rambling thoughts. Thanks for watching my videos. Subscribe if you feel like it, and ride safe.